My name is David Hart. And even now, when I look back at everything that happened, I still feel a soft, tired sigh rising inside me. Not anger. Not bitterness. Just a kind of quiet understanding of how people reveal who they really are over time. But I'll start from the moment everything cracked open. The moment my own son looked me dead in the eyes and said words I never expected from him. "It's just money, Dad," he said. "They deserve a vacation. You don't." I remember the pause after that sentence. The way my hand froze midair, holding my old wallet. The way my breath felt heavier than the summer air filling the living room. He said it so casually, as if he hadn't just punched a hole through 27 years of fatherhood. And those they he spoke of? Not his siblings. Not our family. No, his in-laws. People I barely knew. People I had met only twice. People who never asked about my life, my health, or my struggles, but were happy to accept expensive favors. And the worst part? My son had used my credit card to book their entire trip. A week-long vacation. Flights. Suites. Dinners. Everything. Not a single call. Not a single question. Not even a simple, "Dad, can I borrow your card?" No. He just took it. And when I confronted him, those were the words he chose. "They deserve a vacation. You don't." And that was the moment I realized something painful. My son didn't just take my card. He took my respect and assumed it would grow back on its own. But life doesn't work like that. Respect grows from gratitude, not entitlement. And entitlement always ends up teaching its own lessons. Quietly, slowly, but surely. This is the story of how I taught that lesson without raising my voice, without seeking revenge out of anger, but with patience, clarity, and a bit of quiet strategy. And in the end, life delivered the justice for me. I raised my son Michael in a small suburb outside Chicago. Good neighborhood. Quiet streets. Families who waved from their porches. I wasn't wealthy, but I provided everything a child could need: school lunches, warm jackets, weekend fishing trips, birthday cakes made from scratch. His mother, Linda, passed away when he was 16. That loss changed both of us. I tried my best to be mother and father at once, even when grief sat on my chest like a stone. But I never complained. I never burdened him. I just kept moving, believing love would fill the spaces she left behind. Michael grew up polite, hardworking, a good student. He married young, a woman named Emily whose parents, Paul and Christine, lived 2 states away. They were the kind of people who measured worth by vacations, handbags, wine labels, and whose nephew got into which college. Nice enough on the surface, but everything about them felt slightly rehearsed. Still, I tried to be welcoming. I sent gifts during holidays. I visited when I could. I wished them health, comfort, peace, the usual things a simple father wishes on anyone connected to his child's happiness. But slowly, after the wedding, my relationship with Michael began shifting. He called less. Visited less. And when he did speak, his tone carried something new, almost like he was repeating other people's opinions instead of forming his own. He once asked why I still worked part-time at the hardware store instead of enjoying retirement, not realizing retirement requires money I didn't have. He didn't mean harm. But he didn't understand, either. Life had become more expensive for him, too: a mortgage, a new car, and regular weekend visits to his in-laws, who lived what I would call a comfortable lifestyle. Comfortable for themselves, that is. Not comfortable for anyone trying to keep up. Little by little, I started noticing something else too. Whenever we were together, Michael often compared me to his in-laws without even noticing he was doing it. Christine's house has a nicer kitchen. Paul travels twice a year. Mom's old recipe tastes better when Emily's mom makes it. It wasn't cruel. Just careless. But careless words have weight, especially when spoken to the person who raised you alone. Yet I said nothing. I let things pass. I believed time would fix it. I was wrong. Time doesn't fix what people don't want to fix. It just reveals who they truly are. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I had driven to Michael's house to drop off a small box of old family photos. Pictures of him as a child. Messy, smiling, always holding something he'd found outside. I thought he'd appreciate them. Memories are the only things that grow more valuable with age. When I got there, no one answered the door. I figured they were out, so I slipped the envelope into the mailbox and turned to leave. But halfway to my truck, I realized I'd left my glasses on their kitchen counter last weekend. I had a front door key for emergencies. And needing to see felt like an emergency to a man my age. So I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and walked to the kitchen. The first thing I noticed was the laptop open on the counter. The second thing I noticed was the booking confirmation on the screen. Reservation confirmed, luxury oceanfront resort, 7 nights. I frowned. I didn't recognize the email address used. But then I saw the payment method. Card ending in 4421. My card. The same card I kept tucked inside my wallet at home. My first thought was confusion. My second was disbelief. My third was quiet hurt. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and there it was. A charge so large it made my stomach dip. I sat down on their bar stool, trying to steady my breathing. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to assume the worst. But assumptions weren't necessary. The truth was right there, glowing on the screen. Emily walked in a moment later, grocery bag in hand. "Oh, David. I didn't know you were here." Her smile flickered when she saw my face. "Is everything okay?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why. I simply turned the laptop toward her. Her expression changed. Eyes widened. Mouth opened slightly. "Oh, that." She tugged a strand of hair behind her ear. "I think Michael used your card. But don't worry, it's for something good." Something good. I remember those words clearly. "For my parents," she added. "They've been so stressed." Stressed. Yes. A luxury vacation is the perfect cure for that. Before I could respond, Michael walked in through the back door, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He froze when he saw me. Then glanced at the screen. "Oh. You saw." I said nothing. Silence is sometimes the most painful mirror. He cleared his throat. "Dad, look, they've been helping us a lot. Babysitting, cooking, you know. They needed a break. And you're always saying you don't travel anyway." The words layered over each other like small, dull knives. "You used my card," I finally said. He shrugged. "You hardly use it. And you know I'll pay you back." But I knew him. I knew his finances. He wouldn't be able to repay that amount for years, if ever. I stared at him, searching for the boy I once knew, the boy whose hand I held crossing the street, the boy who cried when he lost his first tooth because he thought he swallowed it. But all I saw was a man shaped too much by the voices around him. "Why didn't you ask?" I asked softly. He sighed, annoyed that I even had to ask. "They deserve a vacation, Dad. You don't." The simplicity of the sentence did more damage than any insult could. And he didn't even realize it. He tossed his keys onto the counter and added, "Anyway, don't make a big deal out of it." And that was it. Conversation over, according to him. He had no idea that in his attempt to minimize, he had revealed everything I needed to know. People show who they are not in their apologies, but in their assumptions. And my son assumed I would just accept this. He assumed because I was quiet, I was weak. Because I was simple, I was naive. Because I loved him, I would tolerate anything. He forgot that love and boundaries grow from the same soil. You protect love by watering boundaries. But I didn't argue. I didn't scold him. I didn't even mention the card again. I simply said, "All right." Because sometimes, all right is the beginning of a lesson life teaches through silence. I went home that evening feeling like something inside me had cracked. not broken completely, but cracked just enough to let cold wind slip in. I sat in my armchair, looked around my small living room, and thought about my life. I thought about all the nights I worked extra shifts to afford school supplies. All the mornings I left early so Michael wouldn't see how tired I was. All the times I gave him the better portion of dinner when he didn't even realize it. And I realized something important. It wasn't the money that hurt me. It was the meaning behind it. He believed his in-laws deserved something I didn't. He believed their comfort mattered more than my dignity. He believed entitlement was easier than gratitude. And that belief didn't grow overnight. It grew because I had let too much slide. I had forgiven without teaching. I had given without asking for respect in return. So I decided this was a moment to teach. Calmly, quietly, without revenge, without shouting. Just a lesson. A necessary one. The first thing I did was very simple. I froze the card. Not cancelled. Not disputed. Just frozen. Which meant the hotel would contact the cardholder eventually. And the cardholder would clarify something important. I never authorized the purchase. But I still didn't tell Michael. I waited. A week later, he called me. "Dad," he said sharply, "why did the payment bounce?" The hotel called Emily's parents. "They're embarrassed." I said calmly. "I see. Did you mess with the card?" "No," I replied. "I protected it." He was silent. I continued, keeping my tone steady. "I didn't approve that expense. So the bank needs clarification. They paused the card until the situation is investigated." "It's not a big deal," he snapped. "It is to me," I answered softly. The next step in my quiet lesson was paperwork. I filed a formal report with the bank, not to punish Michael, but to set a legal boundary. The representative asked, "Do you want to press charges?" "No," I answered. "I want to protect my account. That is all." "Would you like us to remove the secondary authorized user from your profiles?" "Yes." Because I remembered something important. Years ago, when he was in college, I added Michael to my account as an emergency user. I forgot to remove it. That's how he used the card. That's how he booked the trip. So I removed him. Not out of revenge. Out of necessity. Days passed. Then came the real moment, the one where life stepped in with its own justice. Michael called again, voice tense. "Dad, Emily's parents were asked to give a second payment at the hotel. They called me furious." "Oh," I said. "They said you embarrassed them." "I didn't embarrass them," I replied calmly. "I protected my account. And I set a boundary." "You could have told me." "You could have asked me," I said quietly. He was silent again. "Dad, we didn't think it was a big deal." "I know," I said. "That's the problem." I didn't yell. I didn't tell him he was ungrateful. I didn't tell him how much it hurt. I simply let silence teach him. The next day, he visited my house in person. For the first time in a long time, he looked like a boy again, uncertain, nervous. "Dad, I messed up." I looked at him, and he lowered his head. "I shouldn't have used your card. I shouldn't have said what I said." I nodded once. "Yes. And I'm sorry." I nodded again. "All right." He frowned. "That's it." "Yes. But aren't you angry?" "Anger doesn't build anything," I replied. "Understanding does." That sentence stayed with him. I could see it settle into his mind. I then explained the truth, slowly, patiently. "Michael, I worked my whole life. I don't travel because I can't afford luxury trips. Not because I don't deserve rest. You assume something about me. Something unkind. And assumptions carry consequences." He swallowed hard. "And about your in-laws," I continued. "They are not my responsibility. Their comfort is not my debt. And if they want luxury, they should pay for it themselves.
He nodded. I know. I'm
sorry. But apologies fix words, not patterns. Patterns need boundaries. So I told him what I knew he needed to hear. From now on, you will manage your family's expenses. I will manage mine. I raised you so you could stand on your own feet, not lean on mine forever.
He looked ashamed.
He didn't argue. Because the truth, once spoken calmly, has a weight no shouting can match. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Paul and Christine, the in-laws, called me. The tone was cold, sharp, dripping with politeness so forced it almost sounded brittle. David, Christine began, we were embarrassed at the hotel. It looked like we couldn't pay. I answered in the same calm tone I'd used for everything else.
You couldn't pay, I replied. Because you didn't. Silence. Then Paul spoke.
Maybe next time you can warn us if your finances are unstable. I actually smiled at that. Paul, I said softly, my finances are stable enough for a man who pays for his own life. But unstable for people who expect me to pay for theirs.
He didn't respond.
Maybe he wasn't used to being spoken to with such clear honesty. I continued. If you want to take vacations, do it from your wallet. Not your son-in-law's father's.
Click. They hung up.
But that wasn't the real justice. The justice arrived later, silently, naturally, like all truth eventually does. Because once word spread among extended family, including Emily's side, people began to ask them uncomfortable questions. You let your daughter's father-in-law pay for your vacation? You didn't even ask? You didn't pay him back? And Christine did not enjoy explaining the reality. Meanwhile, Michael slowly started to visit again, this time without expectations. Without comparisons. Without subtle critiques. He brought groceries now and then. Helped me fix things around the house. Asked me how I was doing before updating me about his own week. It wasn't perfect.
But it was better. More grounded. More aware.
One day, he admitted something that surprised me. Dad, he said, when the hotel asked for the new payment, Emily's parents told us to just ask you again. They said you were old and wouldn't fight back. I let those words settle for a moment. Then I said, people who measure generosity by what they can take will always push others to give more.
He nodded slowly.
You didn't raise me like that, he added. And I answered, then don't become like that. That conversation was the most honest we had shared in years. Over time, the relationship between Michael and his in-laws shifted. Not broken, just balanced. They stopped asking him for expensive favors. Stopped expecting gifts. Stopped assuming their needs came first. Because once a boundary is set, truly set, even the boldest entitlement steps back. Meanwhile, I quietly changed my will. I didn't remove Michael. I wasn't spiteful. But I changed the structure so that any inheritance would be deposited into a protected trust he could access only under clear conditions. Conditions that would help him, teach him, and ensure he never felt tempted to rely on anyone else's resources again.
It wasn't punishment. It was protection.
Protection from the parts of him that still had growing to do. Protection from people who might misuse his kindness. Protection from entitlement disguised as affection. Protection from repeating mistakes that hurt both of us. And somehow, knowing that my silence shaped a stronger boundary warmed my heart more than any form of traditional revenge ever could. Because the truth is, real revenge isn't about breaking someone. It's about helping them see what they broke. And letting them fix it themselves. A few months later, Michael invited me to dinner. Just the two of us. A small restaurant near the lake, nothing fancy but cozy. The kind of place where conversations feel softer. We sat by the window, and halfway through the meal, he placed his fork down. Dad, he said quietly. I think I finally understand. I looked at him, letting him continue. You didn't punish me.
You didn't yell. You didn't make a scene.
You just let the consequences happen. That's how life teaches, I replied.
He nodded.
When the hotel asked for another payment, when Emily's parents blamed us, when people asked why we used your card,
I felt embarrassed.
Really embarrassed. Embarrassment is a good teacher, I said. He exhaled slowly. And I realized something. Mom used to say you were the strongest man she knew, not because you fought, but because you stayed calm. I didn't understand that until now. I felt a small ache in my chest.
A warm one.
Dad, he continued, voice softer now, I'm sorry.
Really sorry.
Not because of the money, but because I treated you like your life mattered less than someone else's. I reached for my glass, took a sip, and answered. Michael, people don't lose respect for others suddenly. They lose it little by little when they stop paying attention. When they assume instead of ask. When they take instead of appreciate.
He swallowed hard.
I won't do that again. Then this was all worth it, I said. He looked at me carefully.
Are you okay? I am, I replied.
Because I learned something too. What's that? That I taught you strength, but I forgot to teach you boundaries. That was my mistake. I raised you to be kind, but I didn't teach you how to avoid being used by others. And I didn't realize the lesson extended to how you treated me too. He shook his head slowly. You don't deserve to be treated like that.
No, I agreed.
But sometimes a person must see their reflection in a mistake to recognize the truth. He smiled, a small, humble smile. The kind that says, I understand now. We finished our meal quietly.
No tension. No heaviness.
Just a calm peace between a father and his son, restored by truth instead of anger. As we walked outside, the evening breeze felt gentle, almost comforting. Michael hugged me before we parted, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but out of something deeper.
Respect.
A few weeks later, I received a small envelope in the mail. Inside was a handwritten note.
Dad,
I booked you a weekend trip to Lake Geneva. Nothing fancy, just something peaceful.
Paid by me. You deserve a break. Love. Michael. I smiled.
Not because of the trip, but because of the understanding behind it. He didn't try to make up the past. He simply honored the present. And that's how I knew the lesson was complete.